G'day guys, welcome to Footy Rants. I'm Benny Matthews. I will apologise in advance. So I'm going to keep this podcast a little bit more succinct than usual. I figured I'd just go into depth into the Australia-England game and the New Zealand-Samoa game. So focus on some of those Tier 1 nations. I'm a little bit limited for time, so still wanted to get something in as opposed to nothing. So I do apologise. But otherwise, everything in the lead-in as far as preview for week 2 of the World Cup, we'll dive into everything proper there. So, look, even before we dive into anything in the games gone for the weekend, obviously the big news out of today, finally confirming what most people already knew in the last half an hour. Cooper Cronk has agreed to terms for 2 years with the Sydney Roosters. So look, massive news. I guess a result that I didn't necessarily want to see happen. I guess in one light, you look at it from the perspective of being able to see a champion of the game go around for another couple of years and being able to witness that as a fan is obviously a massive plus. And Cooper Cronk is someone that we want to make sure, I guess, we keep in the limelight of our game as far as trying to sell our game for kids coming through the grades as to, you know, what a great example, not only as a player, but what you should have come to expect, especially the pressures of players these days off the field. So yeah, it raises a lot of questions now. What happens to the spine that was existing there? We know James Tedesco is also coming on. So Tedesco and Cooper Cronk, you've got to say straight off the bat, all the expectations on the Roosters to succeed in 2018 now. So what happens to Mitchell Pearce, Jake Friend, Luke Keary? Who's the one that misses out there? You know, we've seen Mitchell Pearce has probably been the player more than Jake Friend or Luke Keary, who's been tossed up to leave if Cooper Cronk did sign. It sounded like it was going to be positioned as a short-term stint. You know, he's only going to be there for 2 years. Let's learn as much off him as we can before he hangs the boots up. But, you know, it's got to be a little bit of a sour taste in Mitchell Pearce's mouth, knowing that, no, he hasn't earned Australian rep honours, but he's been an opposition half of Cooper Cronk at State of Origin levels for many years now. So to have that level of competitor come into your club and basically take your jersey straight away, it's going to be interesting to see how Trent Robertson handles that dynamic. And if Mitchell Pearce does buy in, it'll be interesting to see if that remains a consistent basis, or it's something that he simply tests the waters with, and it may fall apart come, you know, there's one thing to get through a preseason with someone, there's another to get through 26 rounds of the fiercest rugby league competition in the world. So we've seen that offers have been tabled, I believe, from Manly, the Warriors, and Newcastle. They're pretty much the three prominent figures that are standing out as far as giving Mitchell Pearce an out clause. All clubs, I guess, out of those three, if I was thinking where I want to arguably finish your career, unless you're simply going to bide your time and hope that there's still somewhere for you to come back to once Cooper Cronk did retire at the end of 2019. I would be going to Manly. They're definitely a club on the up. Blake Green isn't getting any younger, and, you know, to partner Daly Cherry Evans in the halves, hell, that'd be, you know, a halves combination that I think could rival what you would assume would be Cooper Cronk and Luke Keary if Mitchell Pearce did walk. So, you know, at present it is still all speculation. Exciting nonetheless as a rugby league fan and one who very much loves to analyse the sport. So yeah, stay tuned, and I very much look forward to seeing how this one pans out. Alrighty, so let's move forward. We've put aside the Cooper Cronk confirmation, and we'll move into that Australia-England game. Okie dokie, so just pull that up. We can see there from the start. So that's the breaking of formation of the monstrosity that was, I can't even remember what they ended up calling it, but the Australian team in their acknowledgement of country, I believe it was. So, you know, Cameron Smith awkwardly basically saying thank you to the traditional owners of the land. And yeah, anyway, it was god-awfully cringe-worthy moment in Australian sport, let alone rugby league history. So we see there, I'll just take things back for those that are following the video. the English, they were under the pump sort of early, and this was pretty much their first opportunity to attack with the footy, and they stripped numbers quite easily. Josh Dugan early on, I thought defensively was a bit of a liability, a bit of a worry. They obviously figured it out in the end, and we then seen Australia sort of come back with some level of resurgence, and Matt Gillett and Billy Slater ended up reasserting the lead for Australia. And then after that, as we've just seen on the highlights there, Sam Burgess went off with a nasty MCL injury, which will see him miss close to 4 weeks of footy. They're sort of tipping at the moment, the English camp. So whether or not we see him in another pool match is yet to be decided. But you would suspect that, England being a top tier nation, that they'll very much feature in that finals campaign, and we should see Sam Burgess again before the end of the year. Look, as far as the lineup went for Australia, when I was leading in with the preview, the forward pack was an area of play that I was a little bit concerned with. But someone who did very much surprise me was David Klemmer. I thought defensively early on he was a little bit scrappy. I think he really wanted to try and assert himself as the dominant force, someone who I guess you would class as the intimidator, and it didn't really work for him early on. He shot out of the line and left a few holes back in and around the ruck for Australia, but once he sort of found his feet, he was sort of given the opportunity a few little half breaks, and he did that really awkward little goose step that he does to some effect, actually. And same with Anthony Woods. Aaron Woods. Anthony Woods is the S&C up at North Queensland Cowboys that I used to work with. Anyway, sidetracked. Old habits die hard. Aaron Woods got the offload going. So, as far as the first stint goes, I thought they probably performed beyond expectation, well, at least my expectations. And it was good to see that they incorporated Trbojevic in a bit of a ball-playing role like he does at Manly. A player that I would have liked to have seen them incorporate some of their club-level skills into that Australian outfit would have been Wade Graham. The fact that I saw him there in the 14 jersey, he was on debut, I'm like, fuck yeah, let's get him on this left edge, let's get him with the ball in the hand early, playing to the line, and let's get that edge defense guessing, because it's not a skill that you very much expect of someone his size, and especially a lot of those English blokes, although they're albeit a fair bit of Australian playing experience in the English forward pack, there's another thing to try and combat that. And I didn't feel that they utilised Wade Graham to the best of their abilities. Look, the back five, they performed pretty well. I felt an area where Mal Meninga will very much be not nervous, but definitely keen to address is the halves. It's unlike Cooper Cronk to play in the manner that he did. I wasn't sure if that early hit that seen some claret come from that nose affected him more than what sort of originally led on. But yeah, his short kicking game and was a little bit off kilter. Gave away a few 7 tackle sets, and then Michael Morgan. It was his first opportunity to play in the halves at that level with Jonathan Thurston being absent this World Cup. And even though he's played in a lot of high-level games now, he's played in 2 grand finals. He's played in winning State of Origin series. I think he just felt the pinch a little bit, having not played for a few weeks, and probably experiencing the disappointment of that loss. Seeing I guess the crescendo of that Cowboys campaign, going through so unexpectedly to make the grand final, to lose in the fashion that they did. But yeah, just some of the passes, we've seen him give away that intercept, and I guess with someone who's starting to develop that level of experience now at his age, we've got to remember that he is only 26 years old, same age as me, and it's going to take time. He's definitely going to learn from those experiences. Whether we see him in the green and gold against France this weekend is another question. I'll be pretty interested to see if he does get another start. If he does, perhaps it may be in some sort of utility role, but you would think if they were going to go down that line, you'd probably give Ben Hunt an opportunity and just throw Munster and Maloney in the halves as well. So, so some interesting decisions, some interesting combinations for Mal Meninga to play around with. But overall, I thought it was a pretty sloppy game. As far as the expectations around the performance of the Aussies, they definitely underperformed, and I guess that then allowed England's performance to look a little bit more glossy than perhaps what it was, especially being first try scorers. But yeah, I think both coaches will be underwhelmed with the performance. But in saying that, I guess Wayne Bennett, with what he was saying in the lead into the match, that he wants to build a campaign. He's not going to base everything solely on this game. And if, the 16 other players that surround James Graham can buy into his level of effort, well, they'll go very deep into this competition. To see that one of the last plays where Josh Dugan took the intercept that eventually put the game beyond doubt, James Graham was the man who chased Dugan all the way to the line and nearly got him. It was something to watch. And another reason why I think Josh Dugan should think himself lucky to be in the team. Come up with like 3 missed tackles early on. I know he did end up sort of pulling his shit together and came back after it was the HIA, but I think they were more worried about that cheekbone. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, that loss of Sam Burgess won't go unnoticed, as will the injury to Trbojevic. It's really unfortunate to see a kid finally get his opportunity and come up with a nasty injury like that. So he's come up with a torn pec, which will see him miss 3 to 4 months of footy. So that's going to affect his preparation for the Manly season, which is not what you want from your captain. So particularly if there is a move with Mitchell Pearce, that could prove to be imminent. You want to be spending as much time with any new ball players as possible. So yeah, look, it paves the way like anything. I think when you look at players like Tamalolo and Fafita going to these second-tier nations, you can look at it from both sides. They've then prevented potentially 2 younger kids coming through that are genuine Tongan residents, perhaps the opportunity to represent their country, but at the same time they've given other players opportunities to represent Australia, and Regan Campbell-Gillard and the like. So, I would dare say that Maguire will step into that lock role, and if I'm not sure who will come in to replace Sam Burgess, but they're both big losses to their sides. Probably Burgess definitely more so than what you'd expect of someone of Trbojevic's calibre. But yeah, they're really going to have to step it up a notch, and it's going to be difficult. They're both coming in against sides that they're definitely going to beat. I just can't see either side being troubled in week 2. If they are, well, it probably echoes their performance from week 1 even more. So yeah, a lot to be said for. Again, I felt like the halves really sort of let the Australians down as opposed to the English. I thought Widdop and the half for England, Gale, I believe his name is. Let me just double check that. Yeah, Luke Gale. I thought he was quite solid. I hadn't seen too much of him. There'd been big raps on this Johnny Lomax, and I sort of felt like he probably underperformed. He was okay from the back. He spilt that one where he was jumping, got the whole knee tuck, and it bounced off his chest. And I know it's easy to sit here and criticise as someone who's not playing the game. I thought other standouts. I thought Ryan Hall, the experienced winger, was really good. We see there 186 metres, and James Graham, detrimental for this English forward pack moving forward with 163 metres. So yeah, that's a basic summation. I think it's going to be hard to gauge the performance of Australia moving forward, because they probably aren't going to go with anywhere close to the team that we've seen run out on the weekend. But yeah, they'll definitely be looking for some cohesion and perhaps some players to stand up. If anything, it's opportunities for players to try and cement themselves in those bigger games. So I'll move forward into, as I said, the New Zealand and Samoa game now. Now, this was a game that was very disappointing in my eyes from a Samoan perspective. I was very much looking forward to Samoa putting up a big challenge. I felt, as far as halves experience, it was definitely going to be in an area, well, maybe not so much experience, because they definitely have experience, Paulo and Roberts. It was I guess, the execution, the professionalism, the week in, week out nature. Those two guys haven't played week in, week out NRL for a number of years now. And it showed, when you've got the likes of Sean Johnson in support like that and doing what he does best. And you look at the smile on his face right there, it means something to him. And when he's enjoying his football, anything New Zealand related is going to be performing well. And I think the combination that himself and Cody Nikorima formed straight off the bat, it was great to watch. That the kick back inside, he was just on fire. But it ended up being the New Zealand forward pack that really dominated, particularly the guys off the bench. Packer and Asafa Solomona were phenomenal. Solomona and, as we've seen just before, Takarangi both grabbing tries on debut, which was great to see. And it's good to see New Zealand rugby moving in the right direction. We know that they've won Tri-Nations, they've won World Cups. They have the ability to get over the top of their Australian counterparts. We just love to see them spend a bit more time and invest in these younger kids to help breed this new crop come through. And I think they need to continue to do that with the forwards now. We've seen them select Tarpanay, Solomona. There's so many youngsters, even Tuivasa-Sheck here is still only a baby. It's unfortunate to see these headlines now that looks like a move to rugby, at least at some stage, is imminent. I don't know what we as a rugby league community do to stop that, but yeah, we need to be looking after these guys that are putting on such a great showcase for our game. So yeah, we've seen the highlights wrap up there, and we see that the scoreline finish 38 points to 4. Actually, I'll just skip over to these. And yeah, like as I was saying, the results come from the forwards. Look at that there. The running meters from the forwards. The only forwards to crack 100 meters were Papali and Lisa Narmau, who just managed to get over 100. I beg your pardon. Herman Assesi did crack 100 as well with 114. But when you're only just cracking that 100 meters, that's not a good day for your forward pack. And we scroll down to the New Zealand forward pack. Marty Tapau didn't even play 40 minutes of football, 162 meters. Waria Hargraves, 44. And it was good to see him included in the side. So we see there he was wearing the 18 jersey. I felt as though he should have been there. I thought Waria Hargraves and Russell Packer potentially could have been your starting, and that Marty Tapau could have been a bit more of an impact. But, himself and Packer just about played the same minutes anyway. So I guess as far as impact, they're both going to bring something relatively similar. And it's good to see that they use common sense. Simon Mannering isn't a lock anymore. I like to see him on the edge. He's got a little bit of late footwork, but a bit of anything, he can do a bit of ball playing at the line. And the intent brought by Joe Tarpanay, I think it just echoes the great season that he's had for the Raiders this year. And as did Danny Levi. He'd been a shining light as far as the young side that Nathan Brown was forced to enter into the competition this year at Newcastle, and he didn't look out of place in a test jersey, getting 50 minutes. I thought was very apt, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting a starting run in front of Thomas Lulawai at some point during the tournament. It would very much be deserving, not just of his performance in game one, but just of his club form. You're witnessing the best players in the world, so I think the players that are going to perform the best in this competition are those that are playing in the NRL, and Thomas Lulawai is not. Regardless of his experience and ability to steer around a side around the park, I'm not sure if he's the man that I'd want throughout the tournament. And I think Danny Levi, even Cody Nikorima, I think would perform better at 9. Even Brandon Smith, who's only played a handful of games for the Melbourne Storm, I think wouldn't have looked out of place in this World Cup squad. So yeah, they're the two main games that I sort of wanted to look over. If we have a brief look to the top of the screen, I'll just take it back if I can. Bear with me. So yeah, your other games, you had PNG ended up 50 points to 6 winners. Wales got their only try right on full time off a crossfield kick from Wynnum's own Matty Seamark. Look, I think it was a case of big bodies just carrying it at the line to a number of blokes that are not even, I guess, reserve grade footballers. And you couple that with PNG being at home in front of their home fans. It's like a prison yard out there. You know, you're hard pressed going over there and coming away with a victory. Couple that with the amount of NRL experience that they managed to drag into the side. David Mead had a stellar game as captain. He was the first try scorer, ended up with 3. You know, Seguiaro, it took him a little while to get going. I thought he was a little bit scrappy early on, but then you could definitely see him settle in. And just the number of small blokes that PNG were able to combat with, I think it was the speed of the game that they were able to generate that led to that. You know, at times there they had not only Seguiaro, they had Kurt Baptiste, they had Paul Ayton in the field. Like there was heaps of little guys on there, and they were going hell for leather. And I think it paid dividends. Whether that is a winning strategy long term, I don't think so. I think you will eventually just get smothered by some of these bigger sides. But nonetheless, it was great to see PNG get a win like that after, I believe, they only scored 22 points in all of the 2013 World Cup. So to score 50 in your first game, it's a sign of improvement and moving forward for those lower tier nations, which is great to see. So that third game, which we just covered, so New Zealand 38 points to 8. And then the next game, it was another blowout, pretty similar in a lot of these island nations versus the European nations. Fiji were way too strong for America, the USA, 58 points to 12. Again, it just came down to a lot of NRL experience. And some of those young forwards that I was anticipating played well, very much did so. So we've seen that those guys, names that I dropped that I was looking for, Viliami Kikau played extremely well, ended up with a try. Tui Kamikamika played extremely well, the Sunny Coast Falcon. And so did Benny Knack. Unfortunately, dropped the ball over the line, first touch. Could have had a test try next to his name, but nonetheless, I think those 3 guys that I've just named then are only going to grow off confidence, playing behind Ashton Sims. And after seeing Kane Evans shatter that wrist scoring his try, it just means that one of these blokes is now going to get the opportunity to start. So it'll be interesting. You'd probably suspect that it'll be someone with a bit more NRL experience, someone like your Jacob Safidi will get the nod moving into the next game. But yeah, the outside backs, Kevin Aguama was phenomenal, as was Akili Wate playing in centre, so a little bit unaccustomed, playing one in. Defensively, I think that's where I would be looking to get at Fiji if I'm Australia, England, New Zealand, when I get the opportunity to play these guys. It's definitely an area that he's not going to be overly accustomed to, so it's going to be interesting to see how hard they've been working and how hard he's been working to try and make sure that they're limiting how that is going to affect their performance. Bear with me. So then the upset of the weekend was Ireland and Italy. Italy, obviously strewn with NRL experience. Ireland came over the top of them, 36 points to 12. Yeah, it was quite interesting, you know. The guys that you would expect to get on top, your guys, and I'll just quickly forward down to this Italian lineup. Tedesco, we see from the back there, only 143 metres off 19 touches, and we know that the majority of those are just dragging Italy out of the back end. He was carried over the line a couple of times in a couple of the Irish tries, so he just really wasn't given opportunities to star where you needed him to star. You know, any days, yes, Paul Vaughan did his utmost best at averaging almost 10 metres a carry, but you know, when you don't really have much backup and you're really relying on Vaughan and Alvaro, who don't get over 150 metres, which, you know, when you're there, your go-to forwards, and you don't really have anyone else. And I know, I guess I say that a little bit out of line. Reef Mullaminichello and Nathan Brown all know how to play footy, but any day, you know, you get 80 minutes out of Nathan Brown and keep him to 100 metres, I doubt he would have had a game that bad for Parramatta this season. So, you know, you've got to give credit when credit's due. And the Irish just absolutely subdued this Italian forward pack. We see there, we look a little bit further up, and Louis McCarthy, Scarsbrook, God know where you're from, son, but 200 metres in your first World Cup campaign game of 67 minutes. That's a pat on the back in anyone's books, and the left edge of Michael Morgan and Liam Kay. I believe Liam Kay plays for the Toronto Wolfpack after I listened to a little bit of the commentary. Ended with a double, and just the way that he finished, there weren't walkover tries. He had to do a little bit, particularly on the second one, to remain inside the field of play, and I thought he did phenomenally well. So hats off to the Irish, and what better way to start their campaign and try and get some of that European interest. It's easily from an outsider's perspective to see nations outside of England. It's really hard to try and get any sort of buy-in, but when teams are winning, people are going to take notice. The upset that I sort of tipped, it took a little while to seal, but Lebanon did defeat France 29 points to 8, and Mitchell Moses was definitely the heart and soul of this performance. Played a very well-rounded game and played with the form that we sort of came to expect of him whilst he was in the Parramatta jersey after making his move from the Tigers. Obviously, he nailed that field goal, and then comes up with a chip and chase try that definitely sealed the deal. They just absolutely got on the front foot. They had a little bit of a scare there. If we go back and sort of have a look at the timeline for as far as scoring goes, if it wants to work for me. Whoops. Sorry, guys. But yeah, it was great to watch Mitchell Moses. So it's going to be interesting if he does have quite a successful campaign. So we go here, the tries. So we see they scored right on the stroke of 40 minutes there. So 2 tries to 1, leading into half time, and not much else doing until late in the game for Lebanon. But I think the photo there sort of just, we zoom in there, basically just says it all, and how much it means to someone like a Tim Manor. It had been a bit of a tough season, the way that Parramatta sort of bowed out, and it's good to see them get the opportunity to not put the cue in the rack for all of 2017 and have opportunities to come back and experience success. And I was hypercritical of Mitchell Moses at the start of the season with how he did play for the Tigers, and I don't think it was unjust. I thought he was super disappointing, and defensively he was undoubtedly a liability for that side, but it was something that they obviously worked on severely, and it paid dividends, and I think if anything it gave him more freedom to attack with the potency that we've come to expect of Mitchell Moses. So yeah, a great result for them, and they'll move into the second week against England brimming with confidence, especially knowing that they're missing Sam Burgess. So even despite the unlikeliness of the result for Lebanon, they could prove to be the USA of this World Cup as opposed to 2013. And the final game, Scotland up against Tonga, much the same as I said earlier as other island nations versus their European counterparts. Way too strong, 50 points to 4, and it was basically over before it began. They went at a point a minute for about the first half, and they were without Kane Linnett. Not that that's much of a plus. I don't really rate Kane Linnett at all, even though he is a Cowboy. But yeah, as we can see, look at the forwards meters there. Not even anywhere close to 100 meters. Luke Douglas, the most experienced, and didn't even crack 80 meters. So they just didn't have any ball, the poor bastards, to be completely fair. And when you don't have that presentation of line speed, guys like Michael Jennings just cut them up. Daniel Tupou was given room. I really love that, coming into this side, you look at Lula here and Ada Hingano, not the most experienced and dominant halves that you see, but I really like the way they incorporated the experience and prowess of Will Hopewade into the back line as far as a ball player goes, and quite often he helped strip them for numbers, albeit against an inexperienced, comparatively, Scottish side. I think that worked supremely well. I don't think you're going to see the effectiveness of this forward pack to the degree that you did in this game. Well, you shouldn't expect it, because other nations should be able to combat this earlier. But the way that Sikamanu ran across the field and scored his try, Penny Terapo, the fashion that he scored his try, Jason Taumalolo, I think that's a different beast. I think he could definitely do that to just about any other club in this tournament. But outside of that, I don't think there was too many surprises in this game. It started to slow up a little bit in that first sort of half of the second half, I guess, so the third quarter, where Scotland put a bit of a slowing to the scoring rate of Tonga, but after that, it was very much always going to be the damage done. So I think the benefit for Tonga is getting off to such a dominant start and just having that confidence of that first win. I think that means so much more, even though that you put them in front of the New Zealand side and they perhaps experience something similar in defeat to what Samoa might have been subjected to. I think just the fact that they had that win and now they're going into Tonga-Samoa next week is probably going to be the game of the week in my eyes. Unless, like I said, the Smokies in Lebanon can try and stick it to England somehow, but I just can't see it happening across the course of 80 minutes after they only sort of left it really late to beat a French side. So, yeah, there's a lot on the line, a lot of pride. Tonga-Samoa in the Pacific Island tests that we see during the season around that Anzac Day time. It's always super fierce. The fans love it. They get into it. They get behind it. I know as a rugby league fan, I'm very much looking forward to seeing those big bodies throw themselves around. I'd love to see Papali and Taumalolo come together and really rip into each other. So it's going to be a very exciting contest, and but I think that the confidence for Tonga is just going to help them in their preparation this week. But you can never underestimate the likelihood of Samoa. You can't write them off. Any team that has someone like a Papali or a Leilua, guys that can really sort of individually turn a game on its head, it poses for an extremely exciting encounter. So as I said, guys, apologies there wasn't a bit more video around some of those other games. I was a little bit strung out for time. I'll endeavour to try and improve on that for next week's review. But otherwise, there'll be a nice juicy build-up into week 2 of the World Cup. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was up to some sort of standard, and I very much look forward to having you all along at the end of the week when we preview week 2 of the Rugby League World Cup. I'm Benny Matthews. This is Footy Rants. I'm out. Catch ya.